Welcome to today's edition of Press Hour. The Cameroon Electoral Code may not be perfect, but its presence in the country's electoral process since 2012 has stimulated the participation of many people in elections. It came within a background of general election apathy in the country. The election law is currently under review because there have been some lapses, some shortcomings that have not made it move as effective as it was intended. That's what we're going to look at today on Press Hour, and to look at that very important subject which actually makes us who we are, who govern us, who rule us. For if you don't vote, somebody has voted in your place, and you don't have to complain. And the electoral law is what makes us choose the people who govern, who rule us. To discuss that topic, in the next 1 hour, Press Hour here on the set, we have Aben Jembonde. Aben Jembonde is the head of the political service in CRTV Radio. Welcome, Aben.
It's my pleasure, Kilian.
Next to you, also next to me, is Barrister Fombat Munjem, Barrister Law Solicitor. Welcome, Barrister.
Thank you, Kilian.
Yes, and I go to my left to meet another barrister, Barrister Luke Kisop. He is a Barrister Law Solicitor. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Kilian. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, and Eugene D is the publisher of Newswatch newspaper. He has been absent from the program for quite a while. We're happy to have you back, Eugene.
It's my pleasure to be back, Kilian, after a self-imposed withdrawal. I should say it wasn't CRTV that banned me from coming, as some people are already asking backstage. But I decided to stay away for some time for some reason.
I hope you're not going to impose that stay away again.
Oh, no.
Very soon. Thank you for coming. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll start with press review. That's what we start the program with. And this time, it's done by Yoti Kalelisonke in place of Emmanuel Avemnu, who has not been feeling very well, but she's recovered. Yoti, what did the newspaper say this week?
Newspapers this week were buzzing with bulletins on COVID-19 vaccines. The independent newspaper at the service of the population, The Post, spotlights some Chinese nationals who queued up to receive COVID-19 vaccines in Bafoussam. The same paper takes the readers over to the southwest region, where the governor and others got vaccinated immediately the Minister of Public Health launched the campaign in the region. Still on the COVID-19 vaccination drive, and with the arrival of a consignment of the AstraZeneca vaccine, the bi-weekly Cameroon Insider highlighted the availability of 391,200 AstraZeneca vaccine shots. In the same publication, government emphasizes on the importance of vaccines to the riposte strategy, while giving clarifications on the nationwide operation as the vaccine effervescence hits the regions. Then suddenly, the papers went dark with breaking news on the death of a series of personalities. To Cameroon Insider, it was a Black Tuesday, a Tuesday in which the paper, in its top news slot, carried articles on the demise of the second Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable Emilia Monjo-Walifaka, and the former First Lady of Cameroon, Germaine Ahijo, who was described by President Paul Biya as gifted with a great personality, in a letter to the Ahijo family wherein he expressed his grief. Cameroon Tribune was not missing from the fold as it headlined Honorable Emilia Lifaka bows out. Neither was the sun shining when it reported the death of Cameroon's former First Lady and that of Honorable Lifaka. The Herald Tribune's obituary slot had word on Cameroon's loss of its pioneer First Lady, who was in exile. As if to agree, the Post Weekender reported that former First Lady Germaine Ahijo has been buried near her husband in Senegal. The Guardian Post has it that Cameroon's first First Lady died at 89. The same paper couldn't help but marvel at the dramatic exit of the emblematic Anglophone lawmaker who passed on barely 3 days after throwing a sumptuous party to celebrate her 62nd birthday. Then, barely after Cameroon and Chad took a move to revive bilateral ties in Cameroon Insider, the Guardian Post informs readers that in the battle to maintain a grip on power, the Chadian president died after being shot at a war front. Consequently, Idriss Déby's 37-year-old son succeeds him as interim leader, while the son states that the 37-year-old son has taken over from his 39-year-old serving father. Meanwhile, according to the Post Weekender, uncertainty looms in Chad after Déby's son unconstitutionally succeeds him. President Biya, in his tribute, described the demise of the Chadian leader as an immense loss to the continent. According to Alan Fokker, a journalist with RFE, Idriss Déby minimized rebel attacks. The nation's moving adieu to Cardinal Toumi also featured in the papers this week. The fallen cardinal was posthumously bestowed Commander of the National Order of Valor. The Herald Tribune was all about that tribute to Christian Cardinal Toumi by barrister Nico Halley, who equally penned down a glowing tribute to Cardinal Toumi in the Horizon. Bui also bid farewell to a legend whom Minister Asheri Kilo and the Fon of Saw raised to high heavens. Cardinal Toumi's impact in the world was saluted by Cameroon Insider. Professor Lazare Kaptue, a renowned Cameroonian hematologist, and the renowned Varsity Dawn, Professor Chade Eone, kicked the bucket as well this week. It wasn't all sad in the papers, since Limbe animated conversations as the population marveled that waves dumped a whale on the beach.
Thank you a million, Yoti, for the press review. And we're going to continue to pay tribute to high personalities who continue to leave us for eternity. And we're going to start with you, Aben Jembone. You just back from Chad, where you attended the burial of the president of Chad, Idriss Déby Itno. Tribute to him.
Well, just to say that Idriss Déby Itno was, at the end of the day, the very incarnation of what Chad is. Lots of turbulence around. The situation is tense, no doubt. And just to say that he was a warrior, and
he died as one?
And assumed that to the very end. Mm-hmm. And I think that the nation Chad takes pride in the fact that it is rare to see a head of state who goes to do battle and assumes that with a lot of pride. I think that what Cameroonians may want to remember is the fact that the stability of Chad, of their own country, will be largely influenced by the stability of Chad.
Exactly.
Because of the very, very strong ties we have with that country. You may want to know that we have about 15,000 Cameroonians who reside in Chad. Mm-hmm. You may want to ask yourself, what are they doing there? But lots of them have found home there. There are lots of them who have not been in this country for the past 10 years because they've made Chad their home. So we'll remember Idriss Déby for that.
May his soul rest in peace. You talked about stability. He is not only within the Central African sub-region as someone who is making sure that there is peace and stability right up to West Africa. Chad has been taking care of the uprisings and the rest, and President Idriss Déby has been the champion. Now we had another death. The wife, I should say the wife of the former president of Cameroon, Madame Germaine Ahidjo, also died. Tribute to the family. Barrister?
Yes, we're saddened by the announcement of the passing into eternity of Madame Germaine Ahidjo, Cameroon's first lady. I mean, she passed away at the age of 89. That was quite an advanced age, but whatever the age, I mean, every separation is always painful. And nobody, whoever, can rejoice over the passing away of another person, irrespective of your differences. So actually, we're actually saddened by the demise of the Cameroon's first lady, and we pray that her soul may receive peace in the bosom of the Lord.
That's a general prayer. Barrister Kizop. Look, we had the shocking, because it was abrupt, death of the Vice President of the National Assembly I should say Vice Speaker of the National Assembly, Lifaka Monjova.
Yes, Kilian. In fact, the passing away of Madame Monjowa Lifaka, Right Honorable, is a reminder of, or is a telling of the times in which we live in. There's so much uncertainty about life. The circumstances under which she died, and the stories that preceded her death are that 2 days before, or 3 days before she died, she just organized a birthday, and a lot of people came to celebrate with her. And then, all of a sudden, there was this dark cloud that came on, and it was announced that she has passed away. It is, it is very painful for a lot of people because of the pandemic, which makes people not to know what is happening. Did she die of COVID? Because that's the first suggestion everybody thinks about. Is it COVID? Because she was in a super spreader event. A birthday is a super spreader. Exactly. People come above. It's actually against the prescriptions of the government. And then there's also this problem of now we Africans, we celebrate death, we celebrate life, we celebrate nativity. Now burials have changed. People can no longer commune the way they do to celebrate the life of somebody who was very important or impactful in society. We saw that with the Prince Philip in the United Kingdom, where they had to restrict attendance. People are wearing masks. So the times have changed, and so we have to take consciousness while we wish her the best on her way out of this world. And we also pray that their political family can also find a way to stabilize after this sudden passing away, demise.
Thank you very much, Barrister. Our hearts go to her family. I also knew her personally. You were talking about burial. We had the burial of the former Director General of CRTV, Gervais Mendoza, took place yesterday in Sangmalima, his hometown. Eugene, tribute to Gervais Mendoza, Director General of CRTV, former Director General of CRTV.
Yes, the demise of Professor Gervais Mendoza, who was also best known for singing. That is his choir, La Voix de Cénacle. I was just listening to it in a taxi the other day with a friend, Aminde. We started talking about Mendoza. I think it's painful, not only to his immediate family, but to us all who will be listening and remembering him. But there's one thing I should say. It was established, however, by the court that Mendoza stole from public money. That's why he was jailed. I'm not saying that we should condone embezzlement, but the manner in which he died, the wretched manner the treatment he was given at death, till his death, is a sign of use and dumb and outright wickedness, I should say, by the regime. Because I am not very sure that Mendoza or President Biya allowed Mendoza to rot in jail to that extent, because we saw footages of Mendoza. We knew a huge, bulky man.
Well, somebody who was already ill could only be pale. Thank you very much.
Yes, but I think he was allowed to rot if that was not disgrace or wickedness.
Thank you very much. We got your point. We're going to make a round of the table, beginning with you, since you were the one speaking right now, with another barrier that touched everybody, the barrier of His Eminence, Christian Cardinal Tumi, that happened. And to tell you the truth, one thing that I should comment on myself is the simplicity with which he was buried. And I think that must have been his will, that he should be buried. I think of Pope John Paul II, who was buried in a similar or even more modest coffin. Eugene, 30 seconds. Tribute.
Yes, I think Cardinal Tumi is very respected. It's a great loss for Cameroon. But what struck me a little before he died was his change of position, moving back to tradition before dying, moving to a shrine to be a Chufai, then coming back as a priest, going to a full house. Well, I have no capacity to question the decision of a wise man like him.
Catholic priest, whites whom I know, one in my village and in other places. When Pope John Paul II came to Cameroon, I think that was in 1985, he actually condoned inculturation, that The African tradition is not bad.
I'm not challenging the fact.
It's not bad.
I'm not challenging.
But
I'm not challenging. I'm just saying that he spent most of his life almost away from the tradition. But at the time, perhaps he knew he was on the way.
Well,
he went back to the shrine. He went back to the tradition and died. But I'm saying I loved Cardinal Tumi so much for what he did for the crisis, seeking solutions to the crisis.
Thank you.
I was so much in love with that. And I pray that we have another Cameroonian who takes over and act like Cardinal Tumi.
Thank you, Barrister. In another, we followed from the press review some of the comments on the death and burial of Cardinal Tumi. I read something from there, what I also heard earlier on from Ntumfo, Barrister Neko Halil, who summarizes it in his life in 3 words: love, peace, and justice.
Yes, whether we like it or not, Cardinal Tumi was a colossal figure in this country. And he cut across all the boards in terms of, love, peace, and the message which he tried to pass. He was a high-level proponent for the rule of law and democracy. And he was also a very strong figure in, our religious endeavors in this country. So Cardinal Tumi's passing away is a loss to all Cameroonians. And just as Eugene was saying, the issue about tradition, to me, is not the problem. It did not change the fact that he was actually a Catholic priest. But that desire to always cut across, to commune or to connect with everybody was what pushed Cardinal Tumi to do all of what he did. Okay. Even in his peace endeavors, he touched everybody. He tried to put people together, and his loss is immeasurable, and we are deeply saddened, and we pray that Cameroon will one day replace him.
We truly are, Barrister Fombat Munjem.
Yes, I think the lesson I learned from Cardinal Tumi's passing away is that lesson of humility, that lesson of simplicity. This is somebody who has lived a very, very simple and a humble life. And he has been able to, he taught Cameroonians the rule of law. He fought for peace. Cardinal Tumi fought outrightly against, he openly criticized violence. And he also inculcated the spirit of that spirit of change of opinions. He actually, I will remember Cardinal Tumi for one of his quotations. He said, the truth is the fact that you should be able to speak out what is in your mind, and you should know that some other person has a right to a different opinion, and that tomorrow that person's opinion might even be the right one. I think he stood for that, and I will remember him very much for that.
Thank you. I bet in terms of generosity, I hear that his bank account was in the people.
That is what a priest should be at the end of the day. I remember it was always the same story for Monsignor Wokin. I think that a general lesson for us, the living, because when people die, the lessons are for us, the living. We say we are not skilled to understand what God wills. He decides who goes when, how. But the bottom line of it is, what legacy do we intend to leave behind? What has been the contribution of all of these personalities we talk about who are dead? At the end of the day, how useful were they for the country and for the communities? I think that at the end of the day, it's a major reflection for us all to draw lessons from the passing away, and remember that it's a route for everybody. But at the end of the day, what is remembered is the legacy.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, gentlemen. And we're going to move into our topic of debate for the day. And if you are with us, we just propose this transition, and we'll be back. The electoral law, that's the electoral code, what expectations from the reforms that are ongoing of that text that actually makes sure that we see who we vote for and how that goes on. Elections Cameroon, is actually concerned with management of elections in the country, but the electoral code takes the electoral process from registration right up to declaration or proclamation of election results. And that's where we are all concerned, because what happens there is what affects our lives. If you don't vote, by not voting, you have voted for somebody who will rule you without your consent. And that is where the electoral code is very important, and we're going to talk about that today. We'll start with you, Barrister. The current electoral law that is under review, because there have been lapses, there are shortcomings in that code, is under review. What actually can we say that are the shortcomings, first of all, before we see what we will expect to have in the reformed electoral law?
Yes, Kilian, we should, if we want to look at our electoral election process in Cameroon, we might go a little bit memory lane downwards to see the movement. We started with a system where there was one candidate, a monolithic system where we had one candidate. In the days of our former president, even in the early days of President Paul Biya, there was just one candidate. From then we moved to plural candidate, many candidates. At that time, the elections were managed by the Minister of Territorial Administration, where people complained that it was like a player and a referee, and they clamored for an independent electoral body. The independent electoral body, ELECAM, came in, and people still clamor for some modifications, like transparent ballot boxes, which eventually came in.
The biometric?
And biometric election card, which came in. Today, we have the electoral code with the various modifications, but we still see there are lots and lots of shortcomings, which I think that if we have a politically honest spirit of mind to be able to take the election procedure to an acceptable manner, and then we need to go through some fine-tuning of some provisions of our present law on election, the law that guides elections in Cameroon. And the first article, I think, which is problematic for me, has to do with the appointment of those who man the election procedure in Cameroon. If you look at Article 12, Sub 2 of the law on elections, it clearly gives the criteria for the appointment of the president and the vice president of the electoral board. And what I find very interesting there is that it says that these personalities must be independent personalities of Cameroonian nationality, recognized for their competence, moral uprightness, intellectual honesty, patriotism, neutrality, and partiality. That's a wonderful article. If we get people who square in with all these criteria, I think that our electoral process in Cameroon will move to at least an acceptable. Because I think, honestly speaking, what we have as an electoral process in Cameroon today, for me, it's far below average. But if we fine-tune, if we rectify a few of these areas, we can come up to an acceptable point. But what spoils this article for me is its subsection 3, which says that these personalities are appointed by the head of state upon consultation with the National Assembly, the civil society, and so on. I think there is a problem with that particular provision in the sense that there is no guarantee that after consultation with the various personalities, the person that will be decided upon by the head of state will meet this criteria. We don't even have the possibility of controlling if these people meet this criteria, particularly that of neutrality and impartiality. The experience we have had is that those who have occupied this post, we see that most of them are former members of the Central Committee of the CPDM or formal appointed government officials. Once you give such a post to somebody who had once militated for the CPDM, somebody who has occupied an appointment role, there is every reason that the neutral, the third party, there's every reason that every right-thinking people will doubt, will put questions onto the neutrality and impartiality of this person. I think that we should be moving to a system where there should be a general consensus on who is to be appointed to man this post. We should not entrust that.
When it goes, you've said it.
Yes.
Political parties, they are the main actors in elections.
Yes.
Go through civil society.
Yes.
There are people who are independent, for what we know.
Yeah.
And they extend the list to some other. So where do you want people to come from the moon?
No, not people from the moon. What I'm saying is that it is written that the head of state appoints after consultation with these people. There is no guarantee that their consultation or their opinions are taken into consideration at the time the appointment is done.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move to you, Barrister Luke.
Yes.
Kisop.
Yes,
You
yes.
listen to Barrister Fombat Munjem.
Yes.
How do you react to what he said?
Well, I will start by saying that there's no perfection in human endeavors. You know, the process of lawmaking is a process wherein everybody seeks to be. It has to be all inclusive. I have heard about his criticism of Section 12, but again, if you look at it critically, it's like a merry-go-round, because he says that there must be a consultation. Now, he doesn't say that there's no guarantee that there was a consultation, but there's also no guarantee that there was a consultation. So it can go in both ways. Secondly,
for the last, let me just cut you short. For the last period we have lived with the electoral law,
yes,
they have always been open consultations.
Definitely.
Yes.
I like the way you chipped in. The question you asked him was that would we get people from the moon? Because in reality, the political parties are the parties that are in the National Assembly. The civil society are people that we know. The question is, okay, in my opinion, if there was one addition to make, I think there should be some kind of confirmation hearings in the National Assembly. Because the National Assembly is the house of the people. The representatives of the National Assembly are those that, you know, the members of parliament are those that represent the people. So if there's an addition on that Section 12, it should be that. There should be some kind of confirmation hearings. You know, if you're appointed, you should go there. There should be some kind of screening to check, of course, the issues of honesty, integrity, intellectual, and all of what is said. But in reality, if you look at it critically, there is no electoral code in the world that is beyond criticism. Yeah.
Now, the electoral board,
yes,
are former officials, some of them leading members of the ruling TPDM party.
Yes.
What do you say to that?
Well,
can we say that they will have the integrity, the independence, the impartiality when they were just serving one person a few months ago?
There is a system of checks and balances. If you look at the electoral process, you have the electoral body, and then you have the courts that review whatever they went through an electoral process. So if you challenge the partiality of a member, you have a platform, which is the court, to go in there and raise cogent and compelling arguments with proficient evidence to say, look, this person did not act rightly. Besides, the code provides for all the means by which you can control whether the electoral official is acting in the manner that the posture that he has. The fact that he's a former member of government doesn't change him. Compromise him. He in every role that you play, you have to do your best. So we have had situations where electoral officials have been challenged, their person or their actions, and the courts have ruled. So, as I'm saying, there's no perfection in human endeavors. We work with our institutions as they are. We want reforms, but we have to work with what we have. You know,
Eugene, you listen to them. We are on this point.
Yeah.
What do you say about integrity, impartiality, independence, and neutrality, integrity, as I said?
Yeah, thank you, Kilian. To cue up from what the two learned barristers have just said, it is, to me, very... I think we are too relaxed in the way we look at our laws here, because though Barrister Kisov is trying to say that you can't, somebody who has worked for, say, the CPDM or the government can be independent, I still have doubts how that independence can be proven. I don't see how a central committee member who, until the time they're reading his appointment, as, say, member of the electoral board or president of the board or whatever of ELECAM is until that time that they are reading on Jembon, there is reading at 5 p.m. until 4:40 p.m. He is still member of the Central Committee or the CPDM, and immediately they say, no, he has been appointed this. You say you have resigned. I'm not sure that that one is very honest enough.
Now, let me tell you that I have been walking the corridors of Elections Cameroon, especially the board of directors.
Yeah.
I should tell you that there are members with integrity in that board.
There are exceptions. I said I did not generalize, but there are exceptions. I will not want to judge. I will not want to talk about the members generally, but I'm just saying, of the 18 or so members, you can have a few who are, but not all of them are supposed to be from the CPDM, from the SDF, from NUTP and stuff, or who were members and who think, or not all of them have questionable character or integrity. No, not all.
Okay.
At least a few members can be, but generally, I don't see how a presenter of Press R who is not very impartial will rule people that are impartial.
Okay, you say you have to react to that before we go to.
Yes, I just want to say that, you know, we are in this country and we have lived with these processes all along. All of these allegations have been made several times, but we've never seen a particular situation or a flagrant situation where a person who has been appointed has acted in a manner that shows that he's taking sides. I mean, I put anybody to challenge. As I said, we work within the institutional framework. Now we can complain about the processes that, oh well, there are things that do not permit the other side to be able to really act well. But the people who have been appointed, we've heard this complaint several times. At all times, we've never seen a situation where a person has taken a direct stand or acted in a particular manner. You know,
why don't you think that is because they do everything in such a way that the challenges are limited for one to go across the board?
That's the problem is, does the person who has been appointed, has he acted in a way that has put a whole question mark about his side taking? I mean, I went to school in Nigeria. They have an independent electoral body as well. They call it INEC. You see a lot of challenges on INEC officials, the way they act.
Maybe because they are more independent than.
Well, but again, as I said, besides being an INEC official, besides being an electoral official, you are a citizen. And you also have your own sensibility, which one way or the other. As I said, there's no perfection in human endeavors.
Okay, Albert, you have listened to these three men, the two men of law, and your colleague on the other side of the set.
Do you agree with me that even members of the electoral board do vote?
Of course,
even the most impartial of Cameroonians do vote.
That's why I said they're citizens.
That is why we are saying that the questions of impartiality or partiality are subjective. They are subjective. They are very, very complex issues. I also want to come to the fact that we must first of all agree that the code is not up to 10 years old. From 2012 to
2001 is 9.
It's 2000. It's 9, and that we've just gone through the series of elections, which also saw the putting in place of the Constitutional Council. I'm saying this just to remind us that ELECAM is just one of the units in the general chain. ELECAM is just one stakeholder in all of this. And when we come to the whole issue of who should be a member of the board and the questions of credibility and integrity, and always, I will tell you that as long as he will be the President of the Republic appointed, even if he appoints Barrister Mujem Fombat, there will be people who will raise questions just because he's the president. I am also going to come to the issue of links to the CPDM and so on and so forth. We must know where we are coming from. To say that at one time, whether you like it or not, every Cameroonian was seen to be a member of the CPDM. You take, for instance, Frundi had been a member of the of the CPDM party before. Will you say that if he's made a member of the electoral board today will
trace him
question
back to a CPDM
so you see, we first of all must agree to the fact that it's what we had in 2012 was kind of a consensus, and even in 2012 people agreed to the fact that it was not a perfect code at the end of the day. What we are saying today is, after going through this series of elections, we've seen other aspects that have proven that there are other limits. But we must agree that in 2012, there was a consensus. Now, we should also agree that after going through these electoral processes, every Cameroonian who has been an actor, if he's honest, will agree that there are quite some reforms to be made. But you were talking about a code that is being reviewed. No, I don't think that officially the electoral code is under review. No, what we are saying is there are quite some concerns raised.
The Director General actually made news that the consultations were going on with the regional delegates of ELECAM, who are meeting some other people concerned.
Kilian, that's where I have a preoccupation, and that's why I insisted on the fact that ELECAM is just one of the stakeholders, and that if we must get to a consensus from the very start of every reform, it should be participatory. There should be an approach that brings all the stakeholders together.
Barrister, you raised that point. We've been talking about it. Yes. And we have, I hear there's somebody on the line to Addis Ababa in Kenya. But that's Mr. Ejani Leonard, who is a political scientist. The question I want to ask you is the problem with the electoral code, or the problem is rather with the system? Mr. Ejani, are you on? Okay, I can see him. Yes, we have him online. Yes.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, the question as to the revision of electoral code cannot really be considered as a taboo. We know that laws are made to govern a people at a particular period of time, and as to how people evolve, laws can be revised to suit certain conditions. When it comes to the electoral code, I think there are maybe one or two questions we can pose. Among them is to know if the electoral code permits autonomy of those who administer the elections, independence maybe from the governmental structures. At the same time, to equally know the role this electoral code can permit to political parties and candidates to participate in the electoral process. In the case of Cameroon, we can understand that there are certain aspects we can bring. Our electoral code, for instance, stipulates voting age is 20, which comes from the constitution, obviously. In Cameroon today, we cannot deny the fact that there is a kind of emancipation, most especially from youth, as we see degree holders today who are below 20 years, as we see maybe college, high school students who are below 20 years. This sense of enlightenment cannot be denied. We see people recruited at the public service within below 20 years. So there's a kind of responsibility which I think we can give them at the public level, then they can have a choice to make when it comes to voting. That said, if we should take those who manage the elections and the organ, in Cameroon we can take, for instance, Article 4 and 5, ELECAM is created is autonomous from governmental organs and cannot be instructed by any person or entity. This is an aspect of autonomy which I think should now depend on the people for their independence to be seen. In no situation or in no system you will go, an electoral body is created by maybe the opposition. It's always done by those who govern at a particular period of time. If we should take the role of political parties when it comes to participating in the electoral process, because remember, there is the organization, the management, and the supervision of these elections. political parties do play a key role in all the commissions that are put, whether you take into consideration revision of the electoral list, whether you take into consideration local commission, subdivisional commissions, national commissions. We have representatives of political parties or candidates at all these instances, which gives them that aptitude to control their vote. Any debate out of this is a fake debate. We understand that political parties need to exist, and if we should take national representation is a problem, go to the level of councils. We have almost no political parties do exist, as the ruling party dominates everywhere. You come to the National Assembly, it's the same issue. We can't say it's because of the electoral code we don't have persons who vote for opposition parties, or opposition parties cannot lure persons to adhere to their manifesto. So it's not a problem we need to think should condition stability and security of the state. In no advanced system are we going to see an electoral code which is being structured by those who don't govern at a particular point in time. We can take the limitation of the mandate. The electoral code is in line with the constitution. And in line with this, the constitution limits it, and democracy is not defined on the limitation of mandate. In Germany, it's not limited. In France, it's not limited. If we should take questions based on governance, we do realize that we need a particular period of time for certain projects to be put in place. So the people should be given the aptitude to decide to renew or not. Confidence given to maybe the President of the Republic. This is what really matters. So any debate based on some particular issues or condition state stability because of our electoral code is a fake debate. Cameroon is advancing, and I think political parties should be more interested in having militants, in having representatives in polling stations, which they don't do, in having persons who are there to supervise their elections, in having persons who are there to control registration in electoral list. That is what matters, and this is what the code gives to political parties. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Leonardo Ejane, political scientist, rather than saying from Kenya, from Ethiopia. Gentlemen, you listen to him. I think he raised so many important issues there. He talked about autonomy of election management board. We already talked about that here. He talked about limitation of mandate of the president. He's saying that it's not only a Cameroonian affair, but there's one issue he raised there. The age of maturity in Cameroon is 18, but the voting age is 20.
Yes, I think it's normal. I think that as we are reflecting on the modifications that need to be done to our electoral code, we should also think about the age factor. It's for me personally, I think I don't find any reason why we should cut off the voting age at 20. It should be dropped down to at least about 18. That's my personal view. And I want to continue to, like Mr. Njembonde said, which I agree with him, ELECAM is just an aspect in the whole electoral process. But what we are looking at is, like we say, one of the ways of getting a participatory contribution towards the modification of our electoral procedure is like what we are doing. We are voicing our views that we are hoping that some people somewhere will hear and will pay attention and maybe take that into consideration as we all reflect on how better to make our election procedure. We are not saying that our election procedure is the worst in the world, but we are saying, or what I think is that it needs perfection. Every system needs perfection. And if we are politically honest, we should be able to ensure at every given point that the strive towards perfection should be a giant step. People should see honesty in the perfection.
Yes, another weakness we move forward.
Another weakness that I think we need to think of straightening out in our law on election is the power itself given to ELECAM. I find a problem with the provision which says that ELECAM forwards election results to Constitutional Council or other bodies provided for by the law. I disagree with that. I think our election body should be given the powers to run elections and pronounce at least provisional results. And when the provisional results are pronounced, then after the Constitutional Council entertains disputes, then we can go now to the final proclamation of results. For me, I think Article 63, which has to do with divisional supervisory commissions, and Article 69 on the National Vote Counting Commission, for me, I think those two articles, they don't have any place in our electoral procedure. They should let ELECAM run the elections and proclaim at least provisional results. Anybody who has any dispute with the results proclaimed by provisional results as proclaimed by ELECAM can now seize the Constitutional Council or the Administrative Court and now put on the table the dispute. I don't see the role of divisional supervisory commissions or national vote counting commission. And if you look at the composition of these committees, there is a big question there, because it is for the divisional supervisory commission, it is manned by the president of the High Court, with 3 representatives appointed by the DIO, 3 representatives appointed by ELECAM, and each candidate appoints one member. So you see that if you look at it, if you go around, you discover that inside that commission already CPDM should have at least 5 members. So I think that this divisional supervisory commission and national vote counting commission, they don't have any place in our electoral procedure.
So after counting, nobody should supervise?
ELECAM should be embedded with the powers to count and proclaim. If you think that there is a problem with the figures, seize the Constitutional Council, that can now maybe order a recounting.
You have any problem with the divisional and regional supervisory commission, and also the who proclaims the election results?
Again, we can say these things back and forth. It is all very subjective, because somebody has to proclaim the results somewhere. And what is important from Albert's opening statement is that the electoral body is just one part of the process. There is a court. There are courts that have been put in place to validate or annul electoral processes at all levels. So it all depends now on, I'm talking even inside intra-party disputes. For example, we saw during the voting of mayors after the municipal elections, we realized that there was a lot of intra-party disputes between candidates who were vying for mayor or first deputy mayor or thereafter. Anyway, I mean, we want to talk about, if we want to ask certain things to be done or reformed in our electoral law, we should, I who has worked a little bit on electoral law would say, for example, it is very important that we review the issues concerning the language. Mm-hmm. I think there must be simultaneous conception of law in both languages, because we realize that there are so many errors that are being made. And as lawyers, we know that lawyers always take advantage of the slightest crossing of T's or dotting of I's.
I give you an example.
Yes.
Like when they say drop petitions latest 3 days.
Yes.
And in English, it is more specified, 72 hours.
Yes, I want to go to that point.
I discovered was a major debate for
legal problem.
Because section 133 sub 1 of the electoral code says that all petitions filed pursuant to the provisions of section 132 above must reach the Constitutional Council within no more than 72 hours of the close of the polls. Mm-hmm. Yet, if you read the French version, the French version creates this controversy, which says that toute contestation formulée en application des dispositions de l'article 132 ci-dessus doit parvenir au Conseil constitutionnel dans un délai maximum de 72 heures à compter de la date de clôture du scrutin. So there's a problem here, because
the date and the hour.
So that is a major. Those are the issues that we have to look into.
And I find that Kilian, I find that these are more of practical problems which have stemmed from us having organized this election. Everybody has felt and seen it. I give you another one. The issue of sociological components. What is it all about? People are limiting sociology to male and female. But to you and I, is sociology just about whether the alternate or the substantive is male and female?
Yeah, especially people coming from other areas.
Let me specify that the issue of
metropolitan towns.
The issue of sociological composition is one issue. There's a gender aspect too. But the issue, for example, on if you look like section 171, 218 on the various elections, conditions for a list to be validated. We who are lawyers are trained to reason beyond, reason all round. If, for example, because we saw challenges that came on the issue on non-respect of sociological or gender aspect. If, for example, in one constituency, none of the contesting parties respect it, what happens? Those are the questions we have to ask.
Eugene?
Thank you, Albert. I'll come back to what Leonard said, and which Barrister Munjam was corroborating. I think we have a very passive biometric system. We're supposed to make the law in such a way that when we vote, so we do away with all those vote counting commissions that Barrister was just talking about.
Counting should be there.
The supervisory.
Yes.
If we had an active biometric system where we can vote and follow up what is going on, like we saw in America during the presidential elections in America, you could see it and know that Donald Trump is winning here. Biden is winning here. I think you follow up, but our own, you have to depend on somebody. By the time you are carrying the ballots from government high school, Biamasi, to wherever it will be counted, some of the papers may intentionally or unintentionally fall along the way, and this will either act in favor or in disfavor of one of the candidates in the elections. You, in the course of carrying all those papers after signing at maybe
the return sheet,
return sheet, you want to transport them to wherever divisional elect come. Along the way, you don't know. There can be some accident that one of the papers.
We got your point. That has come up several times. Elvis Teke is here with reactions from some of you who have been watching us on this program from the beginning of our debate here. Elvis, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Kilian.
Take 3.
Yes, just 3 for today. We'll begin with Prince Metapene Obisa Modika, who says electoral law in Cameroon has several shortcomings, like independent candidates are barred from running in parliamentary and municipal elections. They are permitted to run in presidential elections, but there has never been an independent candidate due to the very exacting legal requirement for an independent candidacy. And Mbonewo Brian says Cameroon has lost most of her illustrious sons and daughters in the likes of Professor Biatu, Honorable Ifaka, Cardinal Tumi, and Professor Mendoze. The demise of the Chadian Marshal and above-mentioned persons permit us to reflect on the philosophy of life, and as mortal beings, let's not forget that the wind of death spares no one, and so humility, service, love, and care are the core values to hang on.
The last one
from Kwan Jacob says, how independent is ELECAM when all members are appointed by one person? Members of other political parties are supposed to be represented in ELECAM too.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, you continue to write each time we start the program. We usually publish it well ahead, but we also let you know our topic at the beginning of the program. And now we are going to touch this because Aben Jembonde said actually it's not a review of the electoral code. I think you are going to tell us whether it's a review or not, given that the electoral code depends largely on the Constitution. We mean that if you actually have to review it, it has to touch on the Constitution. How do you see that?
No, every review, there is no law that cannot be reviewed. What we are saying, we have not actually seen the government come out with a stand that they are outrightly going out for a review of our electoral code. But we have, like you said, we have observed the election, ELECAM, instructing their regional delegates to make proposals as to what they think are modifications that need to be done within the framework of our electoral code. When we are reviewing our electoral code, there are certain aspects that touch the Constitution. If those aspects need to be reviewed, then the review definitely has to go extend to the Constitution, and the Constitution itself gives the leeway for a revision to be done. So for me, I think what is more important is this reflection on what are the problematic articles and what are the suggestions. Like what we are doing, we are kind of highlighting the problematic articles and making possible suggestions.
Now, Barrister Kisop,
yes.
Luke, you actually talked about the fact that you worked with the conception or maybe finalization of this code.
No.
Oh, okay.
You are election issues.
Yeah, I've worked on electoral litigation, so I know what it is. Yes.
Now, do you think that some of the errors you raised
is
because some of you legal minds are not associated when they are coming up with this code, and what do you propose?
In fact, this is the major problem, one of the major problems we have with lawmaking in this country. We have said it time and again that you have to include all actors when you are drafting legislation in this country, especially lawyers, because lawyers are social engineers. They understand the concept of law and they understand how it is applicable. If you do not implicate lawyers, they are the ones who will criticize, and they can see a lot of loopholes in your conceptions. And we would say without hesitation that yes, every electoral law is subject to criticism. Even in the United States, we saw what happened in the last presidential election, where the Donald Trump camp was contesting, and we've seen it in Russia. In fact, electoral issues are very sensitive issues because they deal with the future of every society. So it is important that once you want to put a law in parliament or make a law applicable, you should bring in all the actors, all the stakeholders. Yeah. And if we don't do that in this country, we will face a lot of problems.
We'll take that as your way forward. Your last word, Eugene, your last word.
In addition to what we have said, I think it's also important that we look at the issue of single ballot, because this multiple ballot that we have opens a window for malpractices. We had a single ballot. We are not saying it will be perfect, it will be the magic one, but I think if we had a single ballot, we will be moving towards an acceptable election, not like those we have had between 1992 and now that have always been challenged with my friend Luke is up in court every day too.
Just to say that in the 2012 code, the bar was consulted. But I just want to say that beyond all what we have said, I think elected officials should also go through the effective implementation of Article 66.
Article 66 is
you imagine that you elect officials whose real fortunes are not known.
He's itching. We don't have time.
Yes, I just want to say, very important, the issue of time frames. It's a major problem in the electoral code. If we want to criticize, because the issue of 72 hours, which we just spoke about earlier, is very tricky, especially in a country where people, the road networks and the traveling facilities are not very easy. I think we should look into that. We should be able to, and also all political actors need to understand that the problems dealing with challenging election or electoral process has to do with their logistics, not really with the law itself. If you're going for an election, you have to prepare yourself. You have to get the manpower, the finance, and everything that you require, and that is what we've realized in electoral litigation.
Let me end what I wanted to say. I wanted to end by saying that we should be more involved in the affairs of politics and not only wait when the electorate is summoned. It is a big problem in Cameroon where people only take interest when they announce elections.
Including even political leaders.
I think there's one other ridiculous article, one other ridiculous provision I find in the electoral code, which is which has to go with the documents you compile. I look at Article 165 for parliamentary elections and 182 for municipal elections. When you ask candidates to legalize their birth certificates, for example, to tender, these birth certificates are legalized by municipal administration who are candidates, who are themselves candidates. How do you ask somebody to give a weapon to his opponent? I just close my office, I don't legalize, so one way to block my opponent.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, and thank you for watching. We've gone past normal time. We are very grateful for your confidence. Nice day.
CRTV News, ici, toute l'info.